everybody. Welcome to the Training, Learning, and Development community. Happy Wednesday to you, wherever you are. I know for me, it's still morning time over here, but I'm sure for some of you folks, like looking in the audience, it's probably afternoon and even evening in some places. Let's see. Let me give a shout out real quick to some of the folks that are in the audience now. Shannon Pittman Price is here. Diane Jones, Danny, Bobby, nice to see you again. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us. So, new guest in this member showcase, we have Leah Chang. And Leah is out of British Columbia and has her own agency. And I was really, really excited when she accepted my invitation to come on to one of our member showcases, because I went to her website and I took a look, and you have like such a wonderful looking, diverse staff, and the things that you do seem to be really, really good. So yeah, we're just going to learn more about you, Leah, and talk about your background a little bit. I've got 10 questions, 30 minutes, and and yeah, like Bobby says, can't wait to hear about you and your work. I love it. So before we do that, though, I did see on LinkedIn that you have a webinar that you're going to be a part of coming up soon. Yeah, yes. Why don't you pitch that real quick, because it looked like a good one, and I want you to pitch it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lewis. That's quite an honor. So I'm giving a webinar on Thursday, December 16th. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific, so 1 p.m. Eastern, and everyone's invited. Mm-hmm. It's about learning accessibility and 6 simple, concrete ways that any organization, nonprofit, corporate, what have you, can adopt more online learning accessibility. In Canada, I'd like to say we're a little bit behind the States. We're learning a lot from groups like you, Lewis, and this community you're building. So yeah, we're just going to share some of our lessons learned, and at least, hold space for the conversation. I've got 2 great colleagues joining me. So you can check out the link on our website, probably best on LinkedIn. Yeah, the registration link is there. Yeah,
I'll chase it down at some point and paste it. I was looking right now, but wait, actually, I have it right in front of me, so I will paste that in a little bit. Yeah, I did see that you kind of came in after we did the accessibility event that we did over the summer, and I was really surprised at how popular that one was, and actually how powerful it was. I still get messages to this day from folks that are watching those videos and just kind of keep that handy for their teams and things. So I'm really glad that you're coming in, because I do feel like that's a priority for TLDC going forward, is to really focus more on accessibility and DEI strategies, that type of thing. So yeah, I'm glad that you came in through that way. But let's talk about you now. Let's talk about this journey that you've been on. You have been an educator, like I think you mentioned it on LinkedIn. It's been 20 plus years since you've been teaching. I saw that you were in France as an educator, and let's hear about your journey as an L&D professional.
Yeah, thank you. When I saw in your message that I had almost 2 decades, I was like, oh boy, I guess it's true, because I started off as a French immersion teacher. So French immersion is a really popular program here in Canada. I landed in teaching because I had a master's in language, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I just loved learning and helping teenagers learn about learning French, because that's really what we were doing as language teachers. It's learning how to learn language. So I was super fascinated by that. I did get a bit burnt out. Turns out I'm quite an introvert. I love working at home alone. Surprise, surprise. Us in the e-learning industry, a lot of us are actually quite happy hermiting. We're probably working from home pre-pandemic. So what I discovered about 10, 15 years into teaching was it was quite draining being with teenagers all day. As much as I loved the energy and I loved, that engagement, I was getting a bit tired. And I didn't realize that this world of instructional design existed. I had come from, academia, gone straight back into the education system. I sort of wish I had known about that. And my journey into online learning and learning consulting was actually through digital marketing. And I am so glad I had that experience, because the combination of education and digital marketing really primed me to be in this learning technology space, which turns out is totally my jam. So that's my story in a nutshell. I'm happy to unpack some of that too. But
Right. No, I love it. I don't think that I've heard that one before, where you went from being a teacher to being a digital marketer and then going back to education. I mean, we all know like the marketing and education sort of spaces overlap so much, right? Especially on the digital marketing side. But as a digital marketer, I mean, were you finding yourself just like gravitating towards like e-learning or instructional design?
Yeah, so there's a lot of concepts that I really got to practice as a digital marketer. And, I only dabbled in it in a little bit. This is back in the day when social media was fairly new. So that was my foray into it. But what I learned in marketing is all the good stuff that we need as learning professionals, like metrics, analytics, measurement. Also, just not being afraid of trying new platforms and systems. And also how to write in plain language and write a really compelling call to action, which is very similar to a lot of the behavior change work that we do as learning professionals. So it was kind of a good experience for me. It got me a little bit out of, just that teacher language and learning how to use my transferable skills, right, in a corporate environment. And that was a huge learning curve. But there's so much that marketing and teaching or education have in common in terms of the psychology of how humans and our brains work. So it really did prime me for, I think, some of the work I'm doing now. If I hadn't had that background, I wouldn't be here today.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I know I've met a lot of L&D professionals that like that I think would be absolutely fantastic digital marketers, and pretty much are. They just don't even realize it because it is all just kind of like instruction, pretty much. So
we wear so many hats too, right? Like some of the best graphic designers I've met are not actually graphic designers. They're in our industry, right? So
right.
Yeah.
And so how about now that you're where you're at, you've got your own consulting agency, anything you wish you had known like when you had started out in your career about where you are now? If you can go back to yourself when you'd first started, something that you'd let yourself know.
I love that question. It's so hard to answer because so many things, and I would do differently. But I think one thing is I would have maybe spent more time outside of education. Now that I'm seeing it from the other lens, so I've left the post-secondary world. I've left the secondary teaching sort of circles. They're really well supported and they have great networks. There doesn't seem to be a lot of connection with like beyond that. And I'm excited to see that there are some groups now where that the Venn diagram of education in the secondary world and what we do as e-learning designers in the performance world, let's say, where that can collide and create some magic. So I wish I had known that this industry existed before. What I really loved as a teacher was I loved designing lesson plans and units, and I always had some sort of zany project that the kids were doing. That was the beauty of the program I was teaching in too. So I think just having more of a sense of what working outside of academia was like, that would have really helped me. But I've had a great time learning about that. And, the one thing I have, I guess, is you got to be a little gutsy, right? You have to have some gumption, right? So I don't mind asking people like, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I sit in on a meeting? I want to see what you do. I want to learn more about this other world that I don't know anything about. So
Right. And it's interesting that we're kind of going there. I haven't actually announced it yet, but next month we're going to be doing kind of a teacher to ID event for at TLDC, and then actually the following we're trying to schedule one that is focused on writing for instructional design, and that's going to be towards the end of January. But you kind of mentioned both of those things, and I've been doing research about both. And I run across that a lot, is that people don't realize a lot of, especially like teachers, K through 12, just don't realize how big of a world it is out there, this whole instructional design and learning and development space. And how did you adjust, or how did you start to figure that out? Where did you come across all of it?
Yeah, good question. I think it was because I was working in a company, I worked in a large travel insurance underwriter in Canada, and I got to do a bit of digital marketing. And so through that, I became aware of this whole world of performance and development. And so I eventually transitioned into being their learning center team lead. And there's all these cool facets and venues you can go into. So it turns out I really like learning management system and talking about technology and helping organizations with those systems. And it's not dissimilar to what an educator might do in terms of helping a school or a district sort of think about things more globally, right? And think about, big picture items. So I guess I'm answering your question in a circuitous way, but
Right. No, you are. You definitely are. I mean, it feels almost perfect that you were able to run into it that way. And now you're working at serving like nonprofits.
yeah. So I really love picking and choosing the clients and projects I get to work with and collaborate with. And there's quite a huge need for nonprofits to be supported with big picture stuff. So, they might need a custom course design, but more importantly, they might need just some help with like, I don't have a system to host this. What are my options, right? How much does that cost? How do I get grants for that? Or am I hiring a position for this, or should I hire a consultant? I have no idea, right? So having come in through the nonprofit world as a volunteer and also as an employee, and then also now as a board member, I can really see that nonprofits, have some really cool projects to work on, and sometimes have some very solid committed funding. So for example, you'll see us working with provincial or federal groups, even some groups in the States. So they may not be charities, but they may be not-for-profits, right? And also, I really like working in the space where people are very committed to a central cause or common mandate, and they're pretty creative about how they get there. So most groups I work with, the nonprofit ones are either really scrappy and innovative, but you have to be lean and mean, right? Which means you can move quickly or move strategically on some things and make some big differences with some small effort, right? So it's an exciting space to be in. It definitely takes the right background in nonprofits. It's a different world, it's a different language, and also there's a lot of client education that happens, which is the fun part for me. So
Right. Well, I've never heard anyone describe like nonprofits as being lean and mean, but I can see that, and I've wondered about it myself, and I find that really, really fascinating. So, and also, like the webinar that you're going to be participating in next week, you are discussing diversity, equity, accessibility. How did you get into that space?
Yeah, that's a great story. I'll be honest, a couple of years ago, I would probably not have touched any projects that said, must be web compliant or must be this or that or must have accessibility. Like there are a lot of codes for different provinces and states where you have to meet a certain level. I shied away from those. I got into it because I was working for nonprofits that had budget to do some really cool things during the pandemic. So very early stage of the pandemic, a couple of years ago, and they didn't find anyone who could help them with the work that they had. They wanted to design some accessible learning. They had self-advocates and people with disabilities who would, be prepared to be subject matter experts and testers. And, they had the content, they had the budget. And so we just went for it. As I was saying earlier, sometimes we're pretty gutsy, but the best way to get into something is just to dive right in. So our team has really been learning a lot. We've come a long way since those 2 years, but it's thanks to our work with our client, the President's Group, which is Accessible Employers of BC. And, because of that project, we were able to learn and practice and hone a little bit of our skills and increase our understanding of what exactly do we mean by WCAG 2.1, like what is that, right? And then since then, we've, just grown our network. So we've had some consultants that we've worked with. We work with accessibility testers. We have some on our team, actually. And our whole group is sort of tuned into that. And since then, we've been working more with neurodiverse audiences. And I'm hoping you can ask the next question, which is, what's a project you're really excited about, right? So that one was a really big growth project for us, working mostly with people on the spectrum, the Autism Association of Canada, and also people with intellectual disabilities. So it's been really interesting for us. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, I actually did have that question. Was actually supposed to be before I got into the DEIA question, but yeah, let's tell me a little bit more about that. I really want to hear about the neurodiverse projects and that type of thing.
Yeah. So again, coming from a space of deep humility, like we are just learning as we go, right? And so we're very open to sharing those lessons learned, and that's how we've been learning too, is connecting with people in this community. So I'd like to invite you all to go to the inclusiveworkplace.ca, because it's Canadian, but that's our it's a recent project we did. It published in the spring of this year, and holy smokes, it was massive, right? We did a custom website. We built custom resources for the site. It's a resource hub to support employers, employees, and employment agencies. And the idea is that it supports people who were very much affected by the pandemic, people on the spectrum, and people with intellectual disabilities. And writing for that broad audience is pretty challenging, right? So my first hunch was, okay, great, we'll have segmented, streams, we'll have different e-learning courses for each group. And it really challenged us, because the client said, you know what, we want to focus on universal design and a universal approach. And we didn't really know what that was as a concept, and we learned so much about it. So at the end of the day, what we created is, and you'll see, it's a website that's for all three audiences. It's written in a variety of different grade levels. There's different resources. Some of them are in an LMS, some of them are not. There's different visuals, and even you could toggle between French and English, so it's 100% bilingual, which is no small feat. It's a lot of work. And also you can change the color saturation of the website. So that's something that the web development team also designed. So you can decrease, the color contrast. So things like that. Just learning to write in plain language. We've really grown quite a bit in terms of our skill set.
You know what, Leah, I think you sent this to me before, and I saw it, and I was totally blown away by it. I'm pretty sure I don't think I ran into it on my own, but it's amazing. And
thank you.
All of you out in the audience, you need to take a look at this site. I should have promoted this before. I may have even, but it's incredible work. Great job.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a big team on it, and thank you so much, Liz. And you are, promoting it now. But yeah, it's exciting to finally see some of our hard work get out there to the public. So this is probably a project. Not only did we learn so much, and it was such a great, group to work with, but it's also something that we can share and showcase. So that's kind of cool. A lot of our stuff often gets hidden behind, NDAs or it's client proprietary, intellectual property, whatever. So yeah, please poke around, take a look, and maybe it will even be useful for others in when they're looking at inclusive hiring. So.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And if anything, it was just inspirational for me. And I think that my challenge is, after doing that event, and it's been kind of like on my mind for a year or so, but after we produced that event, I was kind of overwhelmed because I didn't know where to start. And it's kind of nice to hear that you just sort of have to learn as you go. And I'm pretty much like a one-person shop, so I'm sort of just slowly trying to get things covered, but it can feel overwhelming. I mean, do you feel that way? And is there anything that you might do to sort of cope with that?
Yeah, no, that I hear where you're coming from, and yeah, there are some tips too. But I have to say, Liz, like, you're doing a fantastic job, and I'm so grateful that you're just creating the space and holding it for us to meet and connect with others, and that's the key, I think, is let's lean on each other, right? There's some great groups, people have done some good things. we're happy to share what we did. We can always improve on that, but we've really tried to focus on, we can't do everything. So what's important? And depending on our client and depending on the audience and all those things, right? Sometimes some elements of accessibility or assistive technology are more important than others. So for example, with this last project, our audience was mostly neurodiverse, right? So we actually decided not to put closed captions hard-coded into videos because people on the spectrum find that very distracting. I'm generalizing here, but this was the feedback we got. So there are no hard and fast rules. Yes, there are compliance guidelines, but again, as designers, we need to design the experience for the audience that we're, directing it for, right? So I think that is the key, is always start with the user first, right?
Yeah.
Let that sort of guide your decisions, and you can't sometimes do everything. So just be choosy about what you can do. I know that's a bit vague, but that would be my advice. Yeah.
And look at that. I mean, I just learned something there about, you're right, that if you hard code the captions in there, that actually I can see how that could be totally distracting, and that's great to know. And I haven't looked at this as kind of like really a space to have conversations, how it potentially could be helpful. But you're right, it is. And I guess I'm sort of quietly doing it in my own way by having conversations like this with you. And I'm just sort of like, trying to soak this stuff in so that I can make the stuff I'm building a little better. So I really appreciate that. You're right. So how do you stay on top of like your professional development and staying on top of knowing what you need to know to continue to grow?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a little harder these days, and I was just thinking about DevLearn this morning. I miss going to conferences. I'm not quite ready yet to go in person, so I didn't go this fall, but I really miss the engagement with peers, with the presenters, but also with the exhibition, like the vendors themselves. I love chatting with vendors and picking their brain and asking them about the latest releases and that kind of stuff. So, webinars are copious these days, and I attend lots of them. I like to, read newsletters and connect. And mostly, I'm very intentional about the people I spend time with. I love my colleagues. So we're all consultants. We all can learn and grow together alongside each other. So I talk about us as a team. But even though we all work independently, and we're contractors basically, it's very important to stay connected and to have that ongoing professional discussion, right? Even to build it into a meeting about whatever task. It's, it doesn't hurt to just check in and say like, hey, did you read this, or are you part of this, and to share those learnings. So I kind of know on my team like who to go to for the latest on, new stock images, or who to go to on the latest technology for video editing, right? And I would definitely advise anyone, especially if you're working on a small team in an organization, like reach out. This is a great community. People like Lewis are connecting us. I love what we do. It's fun. We get to do all sorts of things, but don't feel like you're alone, I guess, is my tip. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it. And I miss conferences too. I'm still kind of trying to figure out whether, because TLDC started out as a conference, a live conference, event, production business. But, the last couple of years, of course, we haven't been able to do that. So still trying to figure out 2022. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the last two you gave were fantastic. And, a lot of us are a little bit tapped out in terms of participating online, but those are great. So
Thank you.
Happy to support. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think I know the answer to this already, but I was going to ask you if there was a specific training project that you're especially proud of. So would that be the inclusive workspace one?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And thanks to that project, we're working on another. It's similar. It's again a federally funded French and English across Canada, but this is specifically for people on the autism spectrum, and it's called Employment Works. And so that's a really well-known, well-researched, well-presented, facilitated program. It's a 60-hour program that is currently offered through virtual instructor-led training. And yeah, they've engaged us to bring it to a self-directed sort of asynchronous model. And not only that, we get to work on implementing the LMS and setting it up and testing it. And most importantly, we get to work with a really great group of self-advocates. So I guess what I forgot to mention earlier is you can't work in accessibility without working alongside and being an ally of people with disability or the people that you're designing for, right? So yeah, we're learning so much. It's really eye-opening. We get to work with them as a focus group. We work with them at the beginning, middle, and end of all of our design stages. And holy smokes, does it really inform what we do? Because we're like, oh, should we do it this way or that way? And then when we get the feedback, we get the evidence, we're like, oh, okay, we didn't even consider that. Great. There's our answer.
Wow. Yeah, that must be amazing. Like some of the folks that you get to work with, and even just building what you're building. I know for myself when I worked on AIDC and the last DEI event we did, it just felt good to work with that. And the people that that I was talking to, the speakers, everybody involved, just an amazing group entirely. Not to say that my other events are terrible, but there's just something about that just really kind of fulfills something very basic about myself. So I can imagine, for you building these amazing things, it probably feels pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously coming from an education background, I'm saying those of us who have similar journeys are really drawn to like helping people, teaching, nurturing, that kind of thing. And there's a whole other stream of what we do out there as e-learning designers that sometimes, we can get bogged down a little bit with the compliance training or the technical training or the, and that's highly important too. But it's so professionally satisfying and humanly satisfying, if that's a word, to really mix and match the types of projects you work on. And yeah, I've really enjoyed being able to pick those projects that I feel really make a difference in the world and make a difference in how we as humans are living here, right? So
right. And it makes a big difference when you are talking about, like seeing what you've decided to pick, so I feel like that says a lot about you and your collaborators. So I do love that. So who or what keeps you inspired?
Great. Well, I was going to say definitely the people we design for. So I mentioned like the focus group we're working with, they're so fascinating. And, some of our assumptions get completely thrown out the window. For example, I got to do some mock job interviews with some people with intellectual disability. We had such a fun time. So I'm really inspired by working with self-advocates. And I think that is so important for us as learning professionals to like not forget who the audience is, right? Also, I'm really inspired by people like you, Lewis. Like this is no, I know it's kind of cheesy, but like I'm really grateful for the colleagues we have in our space. And I think it's just a great time for us in our industry. And thankfully, the pandemic has really sort of, turbo boost drive or whatever you want to call it in terms of what we can do for organizations. Organizations are ready for us, right?
Yeah. I do have to say it is amazing. Hadn't thought about this until my wife brought it up, but she's like, can you imagine like how many people have you talked to and what have you learned from all of these people? And just all of this stuff. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I kind of know a lot about certain things now. So I'm sort of selfishly like, doing this thing. But, what really inspires me is everybody that's in the audience and guests like you, and just being able to learn more about, about this L&D journey. It's really, it's very, very satisfying for me. So, yeah. And I think that's probably the first time I got to mention that. So,
oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you weren't in L&D, what do you think you'd be?
Well, I was formerly a rock climber. I mean, just for fun, but I love rocks. I love, geology and like discovering the solid foundations of things we take for granted. So yeah, I might have gone back into that. I also am really curious about, like, I want to learn more about the brain and how much we've learned about psychology and all that kind of stuff. I kind of wish I had done more of those sort of studies, but yeah, so maybe I would have got into a different career, but
Right.
I really enjoy where I am today. And we get to learn about all sorts of things. I can work on topics with SMEs that I know nothing about. And by the end of the project, like I've taken a whole new program, right?
Right. No, I love that. I like it when people mention that, because I think that that's one of the benefits really of being a trainer and instructional designer, is that when you work with different SMEs, you just get to learn like something that you'd never thought you'd know about, and I think that is very cool. Okay, last question, Leah. If there's one thing that people should know about you, what is it?
Well, I just adopted a rescue puppy from Mexico, and she's had a very hard few days. So
Oh,
yeah, it's been a little crazy, and also moved into a new place. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to start 2022, and yeah, I've had lots of changes in my personal life. So it's quite an honor to be invited to this space, and yeah, lots of new things going on for me.
yeah. No, rescue puppy. I have like a few friends that have the same situation where they, because I forget his name, but there's a guy who lives nearby. I'm sorry, I'm totally going off on a tangent, but he drives to Mexico like once a year and picks up some stray dogs and brings them back to the US. And
Yeah.
then basically, it seems like a lot of my friends just all like kind of meet up and they collect all these like wonderful puppies. And yeah, so it's nice to hear that. It's been really, really rewarding for all of them universally. So I can
Yeah.
say that that you're in for a treat. So
Oh, well,
congratulations on that.
she's fun, even though I didn't sleep much last night. But yeah, rescue puppies and cats all the way.
Takes some work. It takes some work. Leah, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to, this inclusive workspace space website, workplace website. I'm going to go and I'll push that out because it deserves some recognition. And I'm so glad you're able to join us today. And hopefully we will see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thanks to everyone for your comments. Really feel supported, and yeah, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love to connect, and I
Yep.
hope you can join our webinar next week. Thanks for helping me promote it, Lewis.
Absolutely. Let me post that back in. I don't know if Rubina saw it because she came in late, but it's something that I think Rubina would like. And yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Let's see. I know next week we have Lisa and Monique coming back with another broadcast with Alan Natachu. I think that's coming up. And like I was saying, I've got a couple of bigger events planned for January. I've been working on those. One on writing for instructional design, and another for teachers to instructional design. So look out for that. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.